Okay guys, let's take a look at circles. So we studied polygons and we looked at the different features of those. Now circles don't fall under that category, but we can still find the area and circumference as we're going to see here. So first things first, we need to identify a few parts of a circle. A circle is when you take a certain, like a center point, and you measure out the same distance all around. So I would measure out, say, 5 inches or something like that. Then when all of those exterior points are connected, they form a circle, and that's exactly like the official definition of it. Now there's two portions that we want to look at. One is when you take the center point and draw it out just halfway, and this is known as our radius. Okay. Now if I were to have a circle, my rough sketch of one, and I would draw a line straight through the middle, so it goes, that's our center point. If it were to go straight through the center, that's known as my diameter. And these words I'm sure are pretty common to you. You've heard them before. You should be familiar with them. So we want to remember that the radius is only half from the center point out, and diameter goes all the way through from one end through the center point to the other end. Now we have two things here. Notice we have circumference now. We used to have perimeter. They essentially mean the same thing, but circles are the only things with circumference. So the circumference is the distance around a circle. And the formula for that is going to be C equals 2 pi r. Okay? So we're introducing something here that's important, and that's pi. There is a button on your calculator for pi, but to avoid rounding problems, I'm going to ask that every time you use C, the pi symbol, we use 3.14. Okay? Just because otherwise some people are going to get answers that are ever so slightly different, and it just leads to a little bit more confusion. So this is how your book does it too, and the directions will say use 3.14 for pi. Pi Day is actually coming up, so we'll kind of analyze what pi is, where it came from later on in class, but right now we just have to recognize that that's what that is. So before we move on, let's look at this circumference. Circumference equals 2 pi r. Now if I focus only on this 2 and the r, okay, we already addressed what pi is. 2 times r, well 2 times r is just double the radius. It'd be straight across, so it'd be this and this. And what's double the radius the same as? You got it, it's the same as diameter. So what we can also call this is pi times the diameter. So you'll see it written both ways. 2 pi r is one way of solving it, or pi times the diameter is another way. They're exactly the same, it's just depending on what they give you, what information the problem provides. Alright, now the area, just like before, area is all the distance inside of something, and the area formula for a circle is pi r squared. And again, r is our radius here. D is our diameter, r is our radius, a is area, c is circumference. So pi r squared. So this means that the radius is being squared. It's only the thing right in front of it. So what you would do is you do pi times and then whatever the radius squared is. Okay? So let's try a couple problems. Example 1. Scientists have identified the faint outline of a part of an ancient meteor crater on the coast of Mexico. The rest of the approximately circular crater lies underwater. The crater's diameter is about 170 kilometers. Approximate the distance around the crater to the nearest kilometer. So if this were like the coast of Mexico, okay, what happened here is that it says that they found this crater, a faint outline of part of an ancient meteor crater on the coast of Mexico. So maybe they found like a faint one, just like that. And now they believe that the rest of it appears underwater. Okay. Now they're curious about the entire diameter, or they find the diameter. They're curious about the entire circumference of the whole thing. So they go on to say the crater's diameter is about 170 kilometers, so straight through the center. Somehow they measured this. Sorry for my unstraight line. And we got 170 kilometers. That's our diameter, so we can write that in as well. And they want us to find the distance around the crater to the nearest kilometer. So this distance around, well, the distance around is like the perimeter, but in circle it's called circumference. So we're going to use the circumference formula, which is circumference equals, and again we can either do 2 pi r or pi times diameter. Now in this case, it's an excellent example. They're giving us the diameter, so obviously, let's just use the second one. So pi is 3.14, diameter is 170, and they want us to round it to the nearest, kilometer. Pull out your calculators. Again, you're allowed to use calculators here. I get 533.8. But they don't want it in any tenths. It says the nearest kilometer. So that means 534 kilometers is our circumference. Example 1, you try. You guys can give this one a try on your own, but the answer would be the diameter of a circle is 28 feet. Find the circumference of the circle to the nearest foot. So again, you can sketch it out. The diameter straight through the center is 28 feet. They want us to find the circumference. Here they tell us specifically. So circumference is, because we're given the diameter, we're going to do pi times diameter. Pi is 3.14. Diameter here is 28. I'm just going to multiply those two together. 3.14 times 28 is 87.92. But when I round that, I would get 88. So 87.92, but because of this, careful with the directions, you're going to round it and get 88, and this is feet. And notice, I'm not writing feet squared or kilometers squared because we're only finding circumference, not the area. All right, let's try example 2. The circumference is 70 inches. Find the radius of the circle to the nearest inch. So here we have a circle, and they're telling us this distance around is 70 inches. They want us to find what the radius is. What is r? So we're going to use circumference equals 2 pi r. And we can fill in the missing values for what we know. We know circumference, so this is going to be 70. 2 stays the same, it's just part of the formula. Pi is 3.14, and we don't know r, that's what we're being asked to find. So really, this is just an equation to solve for the missing variable. I'm going to start by multiplying 3.14 times 2, and I get 6.28 r. 70 equals 6.28 r. From here, I'm going to divide both sides by 6.28, and I get a long, you're going to get long repeating decimals in this lesson especially because we're working with some interesting numbers. So those cancel, r comes down. And when I divided 70 divided by 6.28, I get 11.14649682, on and on and on. It says rounded to the nearest inch. So although I get 11.146, I'm going to round it to the nearest inch. So I look at this value right, the tenths place, is this going to round it up or down or keep it where it is? And it doesn't change anything at all. So we're going to keep it at 11, and our units are inches. So the radius is 11 inches. And always, like everything we do, see if that kind of makes sense. If your circumference all the way around is 70, does a radius of 11 inches make sense? Yeah, it does. If you got something like 100, obviously that wouldn't really be too logical.